Sarah Mitchell moves through the grocery store with practiced efficiency, her son Jake trailing behind with a small basket of his own. At 35, she carries herself with a quiet confidence that most mistake for the poise of a disciplined single mother. Few in this coastal town of Harborview know that until 3 years ago, she was Lieutenant Sarah Mitchell, one of the first female Navy SEALs to complete multiple combat deployments. "Mom, can we get the chocolate cereal?" Jake asks, his 10-year-old enthusiasm breaking through her mental inventory of the week's meals. Sarah smiles, ruffling his sandy blonde hair, so like his father's. "Just this once," she concedes. Since Mark's death during an operation in Yemen, she's tried to give Jake stability, trading classified missions for parent-teacher conferences and swimming lessons. The overhead lights flicker momentarily as they reach the checkout. Sarah's instincts, honed through years of training under Colonel Merrill Tengisdahl, register the anomaly. Her eyes scan the exits, automatic behavior she's never managed to suppress. The elderly cashier notices nothing, continuing to scan items while chatting about an approaching storm. Outside, dark clouds gather as they load groceries into their weathered Jeep. Sarah notices a black SUV with tinted windows parked 3 spaces down, engine running. The vehicle wasn't there when they arrived. She casually positions herself between Jake and the SUV, her hand instinctively reaching for a sidearm that's no longer there. "Ice cream before the storm hits?" she suggests, guiding Jake toward the small shopping center's ice cream parlor away from the SUV. Inside the brightly colored shop, Sarah chooses a table with a clear view of both the entrance and the parking lot. As Jake deliberates between flavors, her phone vibrates with a text from an unknown number. "Blackfish protocol initiated. Secure package." Her blood runs cold. Blackfish was the emergency extraction code from her final mission under Lieutenant Audie Murphy's command, a classified operation that resulted in the capture of 3 high-value targets from a terrorist cell, the mission that cost Mark his life. The bell above the door chimes as 3 men enter the ice cream parlor. They appear casual in jeans and light jackets, but Sarah immediately catalogs the telltale bulges of concealed weapons and the deliberate way they position themselves, 1 by the door, 2 approaching the counter where Jake stands. Sarah rises, calculating angles and distances. The tactical part of her mind, trained by Lieutenant Susan Ann Cuddy in close-quarters combat, is already mapping escape routes and identifying potential improvised weapons. "Jake? Come here, buddy." Her son turns, chocolate sample in hand, oblivious to the danger. The tallest man glances at Sarah, then does a double take, his eyes narrow in recognition. "Mitchell?" he mutters, hand drifting toward his waistband. Sarah moves with practiced calm, guiding Jake behind her as she faces the men. "You're making a mistake," she warns quietly, aware of the elderly couple and teenage server watching with confusion. The leader smirks, revealing a tattoo on his wrist, a black scorpion, the symbol of the cell she helped dismantle. "No mistakes. You took something from us, now we take something from you." As the first man reaches for Jake, Sarah's mind shifts into the combat clarity she was famous for under Janet Wolfenbarger's command. These men have no idea what they walked into, or who they're threatening. They see a mother and her son. They don't see the warrior who once held off enemy combatants for 18 hours to protect her wounded team. They're about to learn. The first attacker lunges for Jake, but Sarah's response is immediate and devastating. She pivots, driving her palm upward into the man's chin with such force his teeth clack together. Before he can recover, she hooks her foot behind his ankle and sends him crashing into a display case of waffle cones. "Everyone out," Sarah shouts to the civilians as she pushes Jake toward the elderly couple. "Take my son and call 911. The second man draws his weapon, but Sarah is already moving. She grabs the metal ice cream scoop from the counter and hurls it with precision, striking his wrist. The gun clatters to the floor as Sarah closes the distance between them. Her training under Lieutenant Audie Murphy in disarming techniques manifests in a blur of movement, twisting the attacker's arm behind his back until something snaps. The leader, recognizing the level of skill he's facing, backs toward the door. "You're supposed to be retired," he snarls, drawing a serrated combat knife. "Just a grieving widow playing house." "And you're supposed to be smarter than attacking a mother in front of her child," Sarah counters, positioning herself between the threat and the exit where Jake is being ushered out. The man charges, slashing with practiced precision. Sarah evades, but the blade catches her forearm, drawing a line of crimson. Pain flares, but she compartmentalizes it, a skill honed during her training with Colonel Eileen Collins. Outside, screams erupt as two more armed men emerge from the black SUV. Through the glass storefront, Sarah sees them intercepting the elderly couple and Jake. Her son's terrified face locks with hers for a heartbeat before he's roughly grabbed. "Mom!" Jake screams, pierces her like no bullet ever has. Inside, the leader smiles coldly. "Now you understand. This isn't about you. It's about what you know." Sarah's mind races. The Blackfish operation was classified. The intelligence gathered led to the dismantling of a terrorist financing network. Only her team and high-level commanders knew the details. "You have a traitor in your ranks," the man continues, circling her. "Someone who wants what you hid." A flash of memory. The encrypted drive she and Mark secured in the final moments of the operation. The information they discovered went beyond their mission parameters, implicating high-ranking officials in arms trafficking. Mark had insisted they create a backup before submitting the original. "I don't have what you want," Sarah says, buying time as she calculates her next move. "Then your son dies first," the leader replies coldly. Something shifts in Sarah's demeanor, a transformation that makes the man hesitate. It's the same change her teammates witnessed when their unit was ambushed under Colonel Merrill Tangensdahl's command. The switch from soldier to predator. "You made 3 mistakes," Sarah says, her voice eerily calm. "You threatened my son, you underestimated my training, and you forgot to check my ankle." In one fluid motion, Sarah retrieves the ceramic blade strapped to her leg. The backup weapon Lieutenant An Kudi insisted all her operatives carry even in civilian life. Before the leader can react, Sarah has closed the distance between them, using techniques perfected under Janet Wolfenbarger's specialized close-quarters program. Outside, Jake watches in horror as his mother engages in combat unlike anything he's ever seen. The gentle woman who makes his lunch and checks her homework moves with lethal precision, her face set in grim determination. One of the men holding Jake presses a gun to his temple. "Call off your mother or I pull the trigger," he threatens. Jake, despite his terror, remembers his mother's words from their safety drills, games he now realizes were preparation for this moment. He goes limp suddenly, dropping his weight and throwing off his captor's balance, just as Sarah bursts through the door. The leader's voice crackles through a radio. She's not just any mother. She's SEAL Team Hate, codename Valkyrie. Sarah moves with calculated precision, her body remembering years of combat training as she launches toward the man holding Jake. Time seems to slow as she registers every detail, the widening of the gunman's eyes as he recognizes the threat too late, Jake's perfect execution of the escape maneuver they'd practiced as superhero training, the second attacker reaching for his weapon. She strikes the first man's wrist, redirecting the gun away from Jake before delivering a devastating elbow to his solar plexus. As he doubles over, Sarah sweeps his legs, bringing him down hard on the asphalt. The second attacker fires, but Sarah is already moving, pulling Jake behind a parked car. "Remember our safe word?" she whispers urgently. Jake nods, eyes wide but focused. "Lighthouse." "Run to Mrs. Peterson's store. Say it to her. She'll know what to do." Sarah presses a quick kiss to his forehead before turning back to the threat. The leader emerges from the ice cream shop, blood streaming from a gash on his temple. "You're outnumbered, Mitchell," he calls. "We just want the drive." Sarah's mind races. The encrypted drive containing evidence of the arms trafficking network is hidden in her home, secured in a biometric safe disguised as an air vent, a precaution Mark had insisted upon. These men know too much about her, about Blackfish. There must be a leak at the highest levels. Sirens wail in the distance as Sarah engages the remaining attackers. Her movements are economical, each strike purposeful, techniques honed under Lieutenant Audie Murphy's specialized program. When the leader pulls a secondary weapon, Sarah disarms him using a maneuver Colonel Merrill Tangensdahl taught her team for close-quarters combat. As police cars screech into the parking lot, The leader hisses. This isn't over. He'll find you. And the drive. Who? Sarah demands, twisting his arm until he gasps. Admiral Westfield. Your husband wasn't supposed to find those files. The name hits Sarah like a physical blow. Admiral Westfield, her former commanding officer, the man who delivered Mark's posthumous Silver Star, who had comforted her at the funeral. Police officers surround them, weapons drawn. Sarah identifies herself calmly, explaining the situation with the precise clarity that made her Lieutenant Susan Oncuddy's top intelligence officer. When she mentions Blackfish, one officer immediately calls for federal backup. Hours later, Sarah sits in a secure room at the local police station, Jake asleep with his head in her lap. Across from her sits Captain Janet Wolfenbarger, her former team leader. The drive confirms everything. Westfield has been selling classified weapons technology to terrorist cells for years. Mark discovered it during Blackfish. And they killed him for it. Sarah finishes, stroking Jake's hair. Wolfenbarger nods grimly. We've secured Westfield. His network is being dismantled as we speak. She pauses. The Pentagon wants to offer you protection, relocation, new identities. Sarah looks down at Jake, remembering how he'd executed the escape maneuver perfectly, how despite his terror he'd followed her instructions. Mark's son, her son. No, she says firmly. No more running, no more hiding who we are. It won't be easy, Wolfenbarger warrants. There may be others in the network. Sarah meets her former commander's gaze with steely resolve. Then they should know who they're dealing with. I won't raise my son to live in fear. 3 weeks later, Sarah stands on the beach behind their home, watching Jake splash in the shallow waves. Her arm is still bandaged, but healing well. The house has new security systems, and she's resumed training, both for herself and for Jake. Her phone buzzes with a message from Wolfenbarger. Westfield talking. Operation Cleanup underway. Team sends regards. Sarah smiles faintly, tucking the phone away as Jake runs to her, holding up a shell. The weight of her service weapon, returned to her with a special authorization, is comforting against her hip. She is both the mother and the warrior now, no longer pretending these parts of herself can be separated. Mom, look, Jake calls, his face alight with a simple joy of discovery. As the sun sets over the ocean, Sarah Mitchell, mother, protector, SEAL, embraces her son, knowing that some battles leave scars, but the most important victory was standing right here in her arms.